Story is a word that means something like storehouse. When important things are forgotten, they don't completely disappear. They can't. It's just like energy can't completely disappear from the world. And so things that are important that are forgotten, those things that could unify people who are now divided, those important lost pieces of knowledge, not lost understandings of the soul, don't disappear. The old idea was they fall back into stories. And so people used to understand when it feels like everything's going awry, we go back to stories. But I want to repeat also, there's always the two stories, the story of the world and the eternal drama that, in theory at least, goes on, and the individual story, which is always unique and is secretly connected to the soul of the world and to the cosmos. So that's another old idea, that the individual soul, yes, we're a small speck in the great dark universe, but because of that spark and bit of star that's in us, we're connected to the cosmos. And when people lose that, and that's been mostly lost in the modern world, we lose what I call vertical imagination. Human beings are this living vehicle of stories trying to unfold that have this grandness of the cosmos woven into them. The human soul is supposed to grow and get as high as the stars above and as deep as the emotions that are found deep in the waters that from which all of the world came from. Some people are quiet, and some people smile, some people don't, but some people are quiet. But no one's supposed to be small. We're here to grow soul and to unfold the story that was woven into our souls to begin with. We are, in a sense, a living story trying to reveal itself to us, to our own selves. So that's one thing that stories help happen, which is to say, if we can put our story, the part of it we're aware of, the part of it that's troubling us, into a mythological story, then we begin to get insight and understanding of the story we're living. And I'll come back around to that idea also. So I want to say some things about myth and mythical stories, because in a sense, those are what used to be called the true stories or the real stories. And so myth and mythic imagination is something that is ancient and immediate at the same time. And so a lot of people don't understand that. People think that myth is something simply in the past, but it's in the past, but it has a capacity to open in the present. And the kind of myths that are one type of myth that we need to find now, that we need to live with now, are the myths of creation, or I call them recreation. In a sense, we're living in creation times again. So most mythologies of creation begin with chaos, the eternal dark ocean, and then the ocean and the heavens divide and light comes in, and then the world is made. And so in mythology, when the world is falling apart, it's falling into chaos, but chaos is the precedent for the next making of the world. So when we find ourselves in chaos, we're actually also close to creation. This is the kind of thinking or imagining that goes on inside myth. And so since we find ourselves now in a world that turns upside down frequently, in a world that's full of confusion, conflict, and chaos, what's needed, you could say, are creation stories, recreation stories. The key idea is that the world keeps recreating itself. In a sense, creation isn't something that happened back there, but something that is continually going on. And at times, there's a kind of draining of energy from the world, a collapse of structures, which throws things back into chaos, which then can begin the next cycle of creation. And to be alive now, I think, is to be caught in that space between chaos and creation, to be challenged to live with the tension of collapse and renewal. And I call it recreation time. And so myths are often about beginnings and endings. Those are the two bookends of mythology and of cosmology. And so we're in that kind of time when, on one hand, everything's falling apart, but secretly, actually, everything's gathering itself anew. The way we get out of all the trouble in this world is to get into the next form of the world. But that involves letting go of the world as we know it. And there's a lot of evidence that people are having trouble with that. People fear letting go because they think chaos is the end, or when you let go, you'll fall eternally into nothing. People have that kind of idea. But when we let go of one stage of our life or one phase of life on earth, we actually move closer to the next thing trying to happen. And so I wanted to start out with this idea about creation myths and recreation myths. These are creation times. To me, that's the way to understand it, especially the notion that you get this combination of chaos and creation, collapse and renewal.